Let's talk a little hoops, Jonathan, before we call it a night, shall we?
Yep.
All this going on with football, it's been kind of quiet on the basketball front. And one name that kind of slipped, I don't know how you want to look at it, maybe slipped through West Virginia's fingers. West Virginia fans were extremely confident. As a matter of fact, a very popular site out there, I can't remember the name of the site, but they usually track uh, transfer portal players, and they actually predicted West Virginia would land Marcus Smurf Millender,
Yeah.
the 5'10", 5'11" guard from UTSA, and they didn't get him. He ended up committing to Georgia today
Yep.
after taking visits to multiple schools. Any idea in your mind, or do you have any idea what happened here? And if you don't have any idea, what is your theory? B, is it a big deal? And why is it so quiet in basketball right now?
So I'll answer those in reverse. Maybe I think it's kind of quiet because I think West Virginia, um, they got the key components to the roster. And I think what they're trying to do now is build around those components. Um, Not trying to plug it, but I would encourage anybody watching to go back and watch the mailbag version of this show while you're on vacation, because I actually talked about this. I talked about how the basketball team kind of has their core pieces right now. Not that everybody's not important, but the program has their core pieces at all positions. And so I think what Ross Hodge is trying to do right now is to find guys that can incorporate into this group, and now you can make this team whole. So I think it's a little quiet just because they made such a rush on getting guys and it just kind of flooded. And now I think it's more of just been patient, seeing who fits. Um, Not quite sure what happened with Smurf Millender. I will say this, and I even again noted on that show, I was extremely curious to see how Ross Hodge was going to incorporate another 5'10" guard into the mix with Honor Huff been what by all accounts maybe the starting shooting guard. I was curious to see how that was going to work. I didn't hate it, but I was curious to see how that was going to work. So I'm not too awful upset at this. I think there's a couple other options that West Virginia can go. Um, I think right now you have just entered into the patient stage. Um, so I don't hate that they missed out on Millender. Um, I tell you, I feel like I have just harped on it for weeks. Braden Hawthorne is a guy that I would just love to see West Virginia be able to finish the deal here. I'm not quite sure. His recruitment is extremely interesting to me in the sense of West Virginia still remained involved. Kentucky got involved. Everybody thought Hawthorne was going to go to Virginia Tech and follow Chester Frazier. Guess what? He visited. He didn't commit. There was a there was reporting last night that he was potentially going to go to Pitt, of all places, on a visit. And then it came out today that he's actually going to take an official visit to Duke this weekend. Because I've been screaming to anybody that'll listen, this young man is about as talented could get. And now he's going to be on an official visit to Duke. So on one hand, I like to say that that's probably going to close the deal, and that book's going to close. But again, it's somebody that went to Kentucky,
Yeah,
and,
true.
and he didn't commit. It just like every week, it's somebody new. Um, but I think West Virginia is a little bit in the wait and see stage right now about just filling out the roster.
Yeah. My take on Braden Hawthorne is I think with every visit, West Virginia's chances get a little slimmer. To be
Yep.
honest,
Yeah.
I feel like if he was really, he's an in-state kid. So if he was dead set on going to West Virginia, and that was really where he wanted to be, he'd have already committed. That's just my opinion. I don't a total opinion on my part, because that's kind of how it usually works, at least in the past, especially a kid who's from West Virginia. But at the same time, I also can see the kid's point of view. We're like, you know what? I'm going to take advantage of this, man. How many times in my life do I get to go visit Duke and Kentucky and all these other major universities? And I might as well do it. Might as well go through the process and see what they have for me, and see I may fall in love with one of those places. And maybe in the back of his mind, he knows West Virginia is a fallback plan for him. I know West Virginia staff wouldn't want to hear that, but I'm this is probably something he wouldn't say out loud, but in his mind, he's thinking, okay, I can always fall back to West Virginia if Duke or one of these other schools just aren't a fit, right? Maybe that's his mindset. But as you get more and more of these blue blood programs reaching out to this young man and getting him on their campuses, I just think West Virginia's odds continue to go down. But as far as Smurf Millender goes, I'm with you. When you look at what Coach Hodge wants to do defensively, I honestly didn't think it made a lot of sense to have two guys under 6 foot tall.
Yep.
I mean, I'm not saying they couldn't do it, couldn't be done, and neither one of them would work, because I think that my understanding they both play good defense as well. But length matters, especially with what he wants to do and the defense he likes to play, that no middle defense. Length, I mean, it matters in every defense, to be honest, but cutting off passing lanes.
But it would make things
all that stuff is really,
it
really
would make
important.
things challenging.
Yeah, it would. So I'm with you. I think it, and if I'm Smurf Millender and I'm looking at this going, wait a minute, he's already got a guy in my position. And that guy's probably making, from rumors out there are that he's getting paid a pretty big chunk of change that they can't give me now. So why don't I just go somewhere else that I can fill that role that I would have played at West Virginia? I think that's probably, in my mind, that's probably how this is working out for him, which is fine because I think it's going to work out good for both parties in the end.
Yeah, but I would just advise people to not panic about the lack of additions. You weren't going to fill your roster within 30 days. I mean, it was going to take a little bit of time, and I just felt like if you look from point guard to center, they got the core pieces to the roster, and now they're just plucking guys in that they feel can be. Can fit the program, can fit the culture, can fit the mindset of what they're wanting to do in year one. But yeah, I didn't hate. I was curious to see how Millender was going to fit. Ideally, it was a little confusing having both of those guys, him and Honor Huff, and then they both performed better more at the shooting guard position, and then you take point guard. Mm-hmm. So I was curious how it was going to work. I didn't hate it because I was going to trust Ross Hodge had a plan, had an idea, but what happened, I don't quite know. Interesting thing about right now, and I'd even say the same thing with Hawthorne, is that you never know the conversations behind the scenes. Look, West Virginia could say, hey, young man, listen, we'd love to have you. We're probably going to save a spot for another 30, 45, 60 days. Take every visit you want. It's fine. I encourage it. You don't need it, but you have our blessing on it. But we're going to save a spot for about 45, 60 days, and let's see what happens. Mm-hmm. So you never know about what happens behind the scenes there, but he's a player that I think would fit. But then I also think if it's a little – that power forward, small forward position's kind of filling up a little bit for West Virginia too. So
yeah.
Not sure. I would personally make room, but I don't know.
Right.
I don't know exactly the fit is ideal at the moment.
I got you. Hey, do me a favor. Go check out my good friends over at Appalachia Digital. If you need a brand new website for your small business, or if you're just looking to get found easier on Google, go check out appalachiadigital.com/Couz. These are the fine folks who designed my brand new website over at wvsportschat.com. They did a fantastic job. I love their work. I think you will too. So go check them out. appalachiadigital.com/Couz. Let them know Couz sent you. I also want to thank them for supporting my work here at Couz's Corner and at Hoops from the Hills. Now let's get back to the show. WVU's Life has a good comment here regarding Hawthorne. He says, and how much is Duke or Kentucky going to pay for a kid and take a chance? Duke has the Boozer twins coming in and another number one class and people that came back. He will ride the pine.
And there's validity there. I would just say that, and I want to be careful because I'm not saying Hawthorne is one of these, but there are some that just say, hey, it's okay. What's my value worth?
Yep.
How much money they have, I don't know. I mean, I would imagine programs do. Kentucky, they got a lot of cash to spend. So we'll see where it goes. Look, he could commit to Duke this weekend, but we kind of had the same vibes when he elected to take the visit to Kentucky as well.
Yeah.
So, and I will say that on the same day that it came out that he was going to visit today, Kentucky or Duke just picked up one of the top kids in the transfer portal, a forward from Washington State. So how much bearing does that have?
Yeah.
So
Good point.
Hawthorne has a little bit of leverage, but with every passing day, it fades just a little bit as spots fill up.
Yeah, and you think too with the NL money that's being floated, numbers that have been floated around out there that West Virginia's paying Honor Huff and Grayson Trayson Eagle staff. Maybe they didn't have as much money for him, right, as what he may have been asking for. I don't know. There's just and again, this is all a theory. I'm not trying to say the young man's money chasing a bag. That wasn't my intent there, but it's got to play into the equation. I mean, that's the world we live in, right? So it'd be naive to
Yeah.
ignore it. But one comment I did want to make before we get off this topic and close the show is back to the patience topic about why it's been so quiet around the basketball program. I think, the few times I have looked at social media the last few days, I've noticed that it looks like they're focusing too on hiring staff a lot right now.
Mhm.
So maybe they've got, like you said, they've got the core pieces on the roster that they need. Now they're focusing on getting their staff built and getting those announced, and then letting those folks go, do their jobs and go recruit. You know what I mean? Maybe that's what they're.
Yeah. And I will say as well, Couz, and I cannot believe that I have forgotten the name. Pardon me for this, but they do have a visit set up with a kid who was committed to Xavier. 4-star kid, 6'5", 6'6", shooting guard, small forward, that's going to be coming in. So we'll see how that goes. So there is some work going on.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you're just you talk about the NIL money. West Virginia has spent a lot reportedly, and there is about another 3 or 4 players that you've got to continue to add. So you're going to kind of get in the budget portion here of allotment of what you can spend for 3 or 4 players. So you're going to be a little bit more selective right now.
Yeah, agreed.
But I think we would both agree, Couz, that he has knocked the portal out of the park in year one.
I think so. So.
Unbelievable job by him.
Agreed. Appalachia Africa Twin, thank you so much for the $20 donation, man. You're always a supporter. I appreciate that. He says, thanks for the hard work, Couz and Jonathan. Here's a top shelf shot for you, gentlemen. Hashtag hard edge. Hashtag hard edge, man, and we appreciate the support. Really means a ton to us. WVU does need a center. Agreed. They do need one more big. I'd like to see him get one more solid point guard. I know Tracy Eagle staff can play point guard, but I'd really rather him be off the ball as much as possible. So I'd like to see him go get one more pure point guard to go with Jasper Floyd, maybe. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think center. We learned that last year. Center is a position that I think they're going to get. They're going to get active, and so probably need another point guard. Jasper Floyd's going to be more primarily in that point guard role, so you're going to need somebody there. I will say that I actually see the comment from Matthew Forsyth. That's the young man that committed to Xavier that's coming in for a visit. So, Matthew, appreciate you throwing that name in there. But, yeah, point guard, a center, obviously, you need a big, have to.
Agreed. Another good comment here by Stanley Metz I want to address, too. It says, talking about Braden Hawthorne, he thinks it's probably 50-50 on Hawthorne now that Honor Huff is committed. But he thinks that now that all these Blue Bloods are interested, that the longer he waits, it may actually bode well for West Virginia because the Blue Bloods are not going to want to wait. The Blue Bloods are probably going to be less likely to wait around a long time for him to make a decision than West Virginia would be. So it may actually bode well for West Virginia in his mind if it does take a while. That's actually a pretty interesting and not a bad way to look at it, really.
Just don't go to Pitt.
Yeah, please don't. Oh, I really would say don't go to Virginia Tech, but the fact that Chester Frazier's there, I have a hard time saying that, because I understand the connection. But Pitt would be, Pitt.
Oh,
yeah, that would be bad.
That's tough.
That young man would get a lot of harassment, unfortunately, if that happens.
Yeah.
And Tosh Miller, that's a fair point. He thinks Hawthorne is too skinny to play a lot right now. Maybe. I don't know. I've seen some pretty skinny guys play really good basketball.
Yeah, he's just so athletic, so long, so
Yeah.
athletic. I think he's going to be tremendous. Obviously, needs to get a little stronger, but athleticism can make up for a lot.
Yeah.
And his wingspan is unbelievable. I think he could be. I think he could be a really good player anywhere he goes. Now, you take him somewhere to like Duke, Kentucky. I will say that I don't know that there's as much immediate playing time as if he were to go to a West Virginia or even a Virginia Tech, somewhere like that. But we'll see how it pans out.
Yep.